and I take exception and strong exception to your statement. I'd like you to continue, but that is unhelpful.
At the
And
governing,
it certainly doesn't display leadership, so continue.
at the governing body meeting the other day, we were not allowed to have any public debate on the ports issue. And I felt thwarted by that. We went behind closed doors to have the discussion. And it's quite apparent from the assessment I've done round the table that this council has a different view to the mayor with regard to moving forward on this issue. I can say that.
For yourself.
I just,
What I'd like to do today is to put an amendment to this committee of the whole that says we direct ACIL to request Ports of Auckland to cease all work on the Bledisloe Wharf extensions until and after the future port study
I'm happy to second that, Madam Chair.
has been.
And got a second on
Thank you.
Councillor,
That's the message the people of Auckland want to hear. They want leadership, and that's what they want to hear.
Councillors, and I can see where we're going with this, and I think there is leadership in stepping through this in a way that is legally binding and can actually end in a result that we want. Leadership is not simply waving a banner or putting forward recommendations that are not legally enforceable. It's tempting. We all like to be able to do things every now and again that make us feel better for that nanosecond. However, some of us actually understand that governance is about doing the hard stuff and making it stick for the long term. Councillor, that is not a recommendation that has any legal foundation.
I've already
And as
clarified
Chair,
that. We can direct ACIL to do whatever we want, and that's what I'm
Councillor,
suggesting.
it's not a recommendation that I'm going to accept. We have written to ACIL, we have initiated the process that is going to have a good legal outcome. I'm very clear about that, and the councillors around the table are clear about that. This recommendation has no basis in either law nor sensible governance, and we're going to move on. Councillor Clow.
Firstly, just want to address what Councillor Wood's been talking about, and I think this study does actually reflect the fact that we are seeking a really holistic approach and investigation into our whole waterfront, and that's the key thing. It's a very key thing for me, and as many of you know, I believe that the issue of a Northern Port strategy is equally as important. I think it is important we're measured here today because we are in the public eye. We have a port that is valued at $1.1 billion and 79 million. It's got a net equity of 493 million. And it's got a business value of the port operation itself of 586 million. We do need to be cognizant of damaging that value, and whilst we are 100% and it's not publicly owned at the moment, it still can be damaging as to the value of our company, and especially if going forward we were to be investigating anything like a merger with Tauranga and Northland. We have to be aware that that value could be much, much greater if we did that properly. I think it is a little bit unfortunate that Ports of Auckland, and to a degree some of us around here, have turned this debate into an issue of do you want a port in Auckland or do you not want a port? That is not the debate here. The issue here is, and that's what even Urban Auckland organisation has been talking about, it's the issue of how big should that port get from now on? And then maybe in 50, 60 years' time the debate is, or the planning's been done where the port does move and we don't have a container operation, but that's way down the track. And I think it's a shame that it has been a bit hijacked by those who are, let us just say the Ports of Auckland themselves, who are trying to say it's an issue, if you don't do this you can't have a port there anymore, you're going to lose your value. That's not necessarily the case. We just want to look to see if we can be smarter about how we do this. Maybe we can get the bulk goods off the wharf and we only have containers in 10 years, in 15 or 20 years, so it just becomes a container port, which may be acceptable to Auckland for another 50 or 60 years, or forever. So the issue is bulk goods, really. That is why we have cars sitting there, and not many cities would have a big car park at the entrance to their harbour, and when you've got a harbour as beautiful as ours, it's just madness. I think it's really important that Ports of Auckland and our Auckland Council Investments, CCO, be cognisant of the fact that corporates these days have to be really renewing their mandate, especially publicly owned corporates, their mandate and their trust with the public. I actually think Ports of Auckland have been very arrogant. They've lost the faith and the trust of much of the public, and they need to work extremely hard, as does Auckland Council Investments, to try and regain that trust and mandate and support that we give. So I just want to pass on, let us be measured, and let us just be aware we've got a very valuable asset there, which may end up one heck of a lot more valuable down the line if we deal with this properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor
Well
Cole. I
said.
think that sums it up well. I've got Councillor Crum, Councillor Lee, Member Tai Party, and then we have a couple of councillors who do need to go. So everyone is using their full 5 minutes for their speeches. I would say, can we just keep it brief? But Councillor Crum, you very rarely speak, so please take your full 5 minutes. We hardly ever hear.
Oh, thank
What you say is
I'll-
wise.
I'll
Councillor Crum.
endeavour to not take the full 5 minutes, but one never knows. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think that we have definitely some good scope in what we're requesting here in terms of the future port study. Given that we haven't traversed the scope, yet we've included so many aspects of what the scope could cover, everyone should be happy in that regard. Undoubtedly, though, the issue today is the proposed wharf extensions and the trust issues that is engendering or not engendering. And I have a question just regards to whether we're directing, as Councillor Casey has referred to, or encouraging Ports of Auckland around this topic. So given that the letter that we've just read now from the CE to Ports of Auckland says here that we request that ACIL encourages ports to hold off doing any further work in regards to the extensions until the study's been completed. Can I be advised today, can we be advised today what will happen if they are unable to be encouraged?
I'll let you
Given
comment.
that this is
but
coming from on our behalf.
Yeah, big protest.
And it's a meeting that took place between ACIL, Ports of Auckland reps and the Mayor. This is our first,
it is.
it's across our desk for the first time. So what happens
Dr.
if
Blake
encouragement cannot take place?
He's very keen to answer, but I don't want to put people on the spot, given that we are stepping through a very carefully crafted legal process here. My preference is that we actually deal with this in the CCO committee. We as yet don't know what our thermonuclear option is, should all else fail. And I don't want us to be making up legal advice on the hoof. So I'll get Dr. Blakely to make a comment, but we do need to go into this in some detail to unpack it, to get some good legal advice, and certainly to get the response from ACIL at the CCO committee. Dr.
Well,
Blakely.
Madam Chair, it is deliberately worded as encourage, because for the reasons that Bram Van Mel set out, the council cannot direct the port. But I think you can take it that there'll be some very hard conversations held with the port to try and ensure that they are encouraged to do what's being asked here.
And in terms of communications back to us, because I for one think that that's been lacking in terms of governing body communications across the whole issue. How will we know, when will the response be expected, and will that entirely be directed through the CCO committee track?
So the
Nothing in
response,
between,
given
it's timely?
Madam Chair, I mean, if I might intercede. Look, a good part of these discussions will, by necessity, involve me. And so I will be endeavouring to ensure that we keep the councillors as well appraised as possible and with as much frequency, and certainly no decisions about how we might go forward in terms of the way in which the discussions ensue will be taken, certainly binding in any way at all, without all of us being part and parcel of that discussion. So we'll just try and keep you all well appraised. It's not a process that I think will take 1 day or 2 days or 3. It might take a little while. But you've seen, and councillors, you know, that leadership takes many forms. Sometimes you lead from the front, sometimes you lead from the back, and sometimes there are discussions that are loud and proud, and sometimes there are discussions that are held in a more confidential way, and we need to utilise both.
So the key thing is to keep everyone in the loop. Hasn't happened, let's make sure we do. Now, I've still got Councillor Lee, Member Taipari and Councillor Brewer. We've had 3 speakers for the recommendation. I will just call, however, and just clarify who's going to speak against the recommendation.
I just had a question before you finish then.
Very quick question, Councillor Wood.
Well, my question just relates to the Auckland Regional Plan Coastal and the Port Precinct and the Regional Plan Coastal Central Area, which goes back to 1994. Will all those, and the licence to operate and that Port Precinct 1A, will that all be covered in this work that we're doing?
Yes.
As to how it all,
Has to.
the history. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And more. So I just need to identify, we've had 3 speakers for the motion. Are we going to have speakers against the motion?
Madam Chair, technically, I wish to
Ca-
introduce an addendum, so that kind of puts me outside the for or against.
Another amendment, councillor?
But I'm actually for, but it is to introduce an addendum, and I haven't spoken.
Well, okay, if we've got an amendment, I am going to, I've got, as I say, Member
should be
Taipari and
acceptable.
Councillor Brewer. We can probably take 2 quick, but we have undertaken to be brief and focused
I'll be brief.
at our meetings.
Thank you.
I'm just going to give Member Taipari the opportunity to speak.
No, I think I'm before Member Taipari.
You were, but I thought you wanted to do an amendment.
Addendum.
Well,
Oh.
okay. Whenever you, okay.
Whenever, whatever. Okay. Why don't we hear from Member Taipari, and then we'll take your addendum amendment. Member Taipari.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Madam Chair, I just want to say that, yes, we will be supporting the recommendation as we did in the last 2 occasions, and we accept that this is all about stage 2. Why in stage 1 where Māori were missed out, we don't know, but we strongly sought to have them recognised as a role that they'll have in Auckland, a role they have with the economy and the cultural interests that date centuries back. And so this report is well overdue, and I just want to acknowledge the leadership for actually bringing it forward, because for what I've been seeing of recent times, the old saying of confusion creates opportunity is reigning supreme. So we are clearly wanting to see a report that is comprehensive, as Councillor Wood seeks, that is inclusive of the people of Auckland and understands the dynamics of our country and the ability for us to move ahead. So on that basis, Madam Chair, I am going to be quick, but we believe that this report is in the best interest of Auckland, including Māori.